Hey friend, what's going on? It's Luke from Madman-Music, and if I haven't said it to you already, Happy New Year. Hope you had a great Christmas and New Year. I had a really nice time. I took some much needed time off, spent time with my family, and just really enjoyed being in the moment. But it's a new year, we're back to it, and I wanted to jump into something really practical today, which is to create your perfect pop vocal, because let's be honest, we're always searching for that perfect tone. And what I'm going to show you today is just one method of finding a perfect pop vocal. I've actually uncovered several different methods in my time of producing. So it's not one size fits all. It does vary from vocal to vocal. But this is a pretty good idea. And I guess some of the principles that I suggest to you today, some of the plugins and reasons I use plugins to create a pop vocal, you can apply in other scenarios as well. So without further ado, let's jump in. So the song here is something that I wrote just last week and recorded it as well. And I just want to focus on the chorus part here. Let's take a listen through.
Pouring out the whiskey from the bottle, I'm losing sleep. I can't make it go away. I tried letting you go, but I find myself battle back and forth. 'Cause I would go the way just to see you one day. Always a space for you here in my heart.
Okay, so that should give you a rough idea of the song and how it's sounding. And if you noticed or may not have noticed, there's only one vocal throughout this whole song. I didn't do any doubles. I've done no harmonies, nothing like that. My goal was to just use one vocal, have one intimate vocal, but make that sound huge and to occupy the space and be really at the forefront, which is kind of what we want from a pop vocal. So I'll jump in and just show you my plugins and my process for getting this vocal as it is. So my vocal is this blue part here if you're watching on YouTube. If not, I'll play it to you now in solo so you can hear what's going on.
Pouring out the whiskey from the bottle, I'm losing sleep. I can't make it go away. I tried letting you go, but I find myself battle back and forth.
Okay, so that's how it sounds on its own, soloed from the track, and it's pretty solid. I'm really pleased with how this turned out. So let's jump in with what I did. So if I just open up my mixer here, now you can see this track that's highlighted here. There's a lot of plugins on it, and maybe this is overkill, but I just found that each of these plugins, I mean, really, they're doing very small things. They're not doing anything major. There's not really anything doing the grunt work of the vocal. They're all adding tiny little bits. And I think that's a common misconception. When you're doing pop vocals, a lot of people think you have to smash these compressors and, really turn up these EQs in certain areas to get the sound that you want. And if it calls for it and it's necessary, then go for it. But actually, I find that little and subtle tweaks work best, and then I stack the subtleties, which then becomes quite a big sound. So I'll just take all the plugins off here. So you heard it before, and this is how it sounds dry.
Pouring out the whiskey from the bottle, I'm losing sleep. I can't make it go away. I tried letting you go.
So yeah, it's just a normal vocal take. It's nothing special. It's as you would record it. What I did actually do with this is I ran it through just a vocal pitching software, Melodyne, and I just manually corrected some notes. But that was all I did prior to that raw vocal there. So that is as raw as it comes. And then what I did, the first plugin that I used here is Auto-Tune. And you can use any auto-tune. I like to use this one from Antares or however you pronounce it. I think it's Antares. Really great plugin. I love this. It's a really nice plugin to use. I have the retune speed set quite high, but I have the flex tune, which is the second knob down here, set quite high. as well. And the retune speed is how quickly the note will snap to the correct note. So the higher it is, the more of that robotic sound you're going to get. And the flex tune, it's how much it keeps the note in tune while the note is being sang. So you can retune to the note quickly, but then that middle portion of the note that you're singing, how much of that is actually kept in tune? Do you want that to be sounding natural, or do you want that to be completely robotic as well? So that's what flex tune is. So I wanted something quite fast in terms of retune speed, but I still wanted the middle of my notes to sound really natural and human. So if I just add my auto tune and then play the vocal.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle, I'm losing sleep, I can't make it go away.
It just tidies it up a little bit. Again, I did a little bit of manual tuning before, and then I just added this extra as well. So it's just tidying up just any loose ends that I perhaps didn't pick up in the process. The next thing that I'm adding is Virtual Mix Rack here by Slate Digital. And I'll just turn this on so you can hear what it's doing.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle, I'm losing sleep, I can't make it go away, I tried letting you go.
Okay, and what I'm doing here is I'm adding just, it looks quite complex in the beginning here, but the Slate plugin is called Virtual Mix Rack, and you can essentially add all these different effects units to process your vocal. So the first one that I've got here is a virtual channel, and this is just on the basic Brit 4KE, and this is just a bit like saturation. So I've just put this as the first plugin just to give it a bit of saturation and warmth. My next plugin that I've got here is EQ, and what I've done is I've scooped out the bottom end about 60 hertz, and that's about all I've done. Oh, I've also taken a little bit from the top end because the microphone that I used was very bright on my vocal, and a lot of those kind of slightly brighter, harsher harmonics were coming through and they weren't sounding great. So I just wanted to tone it down a bit on the top end there. So again, I just reduced it 1.5 decibels at about 15K there. And then here, the third plugin that I've got in this virtual mix rack is a compressor. And this compressor is just doing some very, very light work. And I'll just show you how it's sounding with just these first three plugins, the saturation, the EQ, and the compressor.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle, I'm losing sleep, I can't make it go away.
So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that the needle of the compressor is actually only initiating when there's a loud part, and it's only going to -3 decibels. So I'm only reducing it by 3 dB. And again, it's just very light. The ratio is 3.5. My attack is slow. My release is fast. No makeup gain. Again, it's just subtle. It's not doing anything crazy, but it's just smoothing out and quietening down those louder parts. The fourth plugin that I put in Virtual Mix Rack here is a saturation plugin. It's the Hollywood tube saturation here, and I love how this sounds. I've just got a little bit, again, 3.74 out of 10. Let me just apply that and you can see how it sounds.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle.
Before.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle.
And you might need some headphones or some good speakers to hear this.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle.
It's just adding a little bit of kind of brightness back into the vocal, but like a pleasant brightness, something that we would want from a pop vocal. My next plugin along here is Revival. And again, doing very little. There's two knobs on Revival here. There is the shimmer knob, which is going to give it that shimmer and high end. And then you've got the thickness, which is the bottom here. And the thickness, I've just boosted that just a smidge. I just wanted just a nice thick vocal to be up front. Because I think what a lot of people can do is they take away a lot of the bottom end of the vocal and don't leave very much there. So the vocal can sound thin and quite tinny sometimes. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't have that. So I gave it some extra thickness there. And then finally, I've got another compressor here at the end.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle.
And you can see, again, this is, again, just doing some really light work. It's only maximally reducing it by about 3 decibels. So nothing crazy at all. I've got my ratio set to 4, and it's the 1176 style compressor. So yeah, really, really liking that. Just a smooth compression unit. Okay. So altogether, that was sounding as I just played it. And what I then did was add a little bit of a de-esser. So if we take a listen to the word whiskey.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle.
I just wanted to tame those S's a little bit. So I popped, it's called Eiosis or Eiosis or something. Again, it's by Slate Digital. It comes in their kind of a monthly package that you can get.
Pour another whiskey from the
So take a listen to the S's now when I've applied it.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle.
Before.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle.
After.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle.
It's just taming those harsh S sounds, those sibilants, the things that are going to cut through the mix and don't sound very pleasant. With your pop vocals, you want them to be bright, but the compromise is that you get a lot of sibilant sounds. So we tackle that by adding de-essers. So that's what we've done there. Again, doing some light stuff. I don't have it going hard at all. I've actually got the dry wet knob at about 60% there. I then just added another equalizer here and another bit of compression, multi-band compression. So the equalizer is just rolling off a little more of the bottom end here.
Pour another whiskey.
And I've got a dynamic EQ set taming some of these mid frequencies here. And I won't go too much into dynamic band EQ processing, but if you would like me to do a video on it, let me know, because there's quite a lot to it. I'm just going to skim through all the effects here as I have them. So a bit of dynamic EQ processing to tame some of the harsh notes. And then with my compressor, I've got a low multiband compressor and a high one here. And again, the low one just tackling those low frequencies to achieve kind of a smooth sound. And the higher one is actually being a bit more aggressive to really take away just the peaks.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle. I'm losing sleep.
And this is all relative to the louder section. You know, when I go to the quieter section of the vocal here.
'Cause I would go all the way.
Again, a lot of these compressors are barely sort of touching it. So I always work based on the louder part of the vocal, and then I work backwards from there. I then wanted to add just another bit of saturation here, the Kramer tape. So this is the next plugin in my chain. And again, just adds this really nice, it's got a really nice saturation sound. It almost just smoothens out the vocal a little more. So again, this is without.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle.
And this is with.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle.
It just rounds the vocal off a little bit. Again, it's really subtle. And I told you, these plugins are doing really subtle things. All right. Really, really subtle. The next thing that I added was just a bit more compression here using the LA2A, or FG2A, I should say, which is a model of this sort of LA2A plugin. And again, it's just adding that final bit of smoothing compression over the top.
Pour another.
Now this is actually doing quite a bit of heavy lifting here. With the 3 compressors I've added before, it really is smoothing that vocal out. So I can afford to be a little more aggressive with this vocal here, because there's not going to be any crazy sounding compression. When you squash something a little too much, it can sound a little bit lifeless. I can afford to get away with that here because I've put and stacked my compressions prior.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle. I'm losing sleep.
And then I just added just another EQ here just to back off the low end a little bit. And what you'll find is when you add plugins, they will add more harmonies, harmonics, characteristics to your vocal. And so what you might have to do is, what I found with this plugin is that it added a lot more bottom end than I wanted. It boosted the bottom end more than I wanted it to. So I had to just knock it back again, which is why there's so many plugins, because, I add one and it affects my vocal in one way, but it adds an extra bit of information that I don't want or necessarily need. And then the last few plugins here, there's so much. Normally my plugins don't look this hectic, but it worked in this case. It's just fresh air here. It's just a bit of brightness. What it's doing is it's adding this kind of high band saturation, an EQ. It's kind of boosting it in the very top end. So it's really giving it some super clean brightness here.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle.
Without.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle.
With.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle.
And that's adding some pleasant high harmonics. I know I took it down from the vocal mic before, but this is adding pleasant harmonics. So yeah, I was really keen to keep that in or add that back in, I should say, using the Fresh Air tool here. This is free from Slate Digital. Definitely get it. In doing that, obviously I decided I boosted the sibilants again. So I just wanted to tame them a little more by adding another de-esser here.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle.
Without.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle.
With.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle.
De-essers are great because you can get your vocal super present, but without that kind of harsh sibilant sound. Okay, final two plugins here. Little Altar Boy. This is just a staple in any kind of music production here, especially when it comes to pop vocal production. And so what I've done is I've applied this formant at -3, and then I've just added a bit of drive. And what I've done is I've mixed in at about, let's call that sort of 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock on the dry, wet mix knob there. Now, if I turn it up all the way, this is how it sounds.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle. I'm losing sleep.
So the formant is affecting the sound of that voice, that vocal, so it's making it sound deeper, but it's the same pitch.
Pour another whiskey.
I didn't want that to be too much, so I just blended it in. Again, about a quarter of the way, 10, 11 o'clock on the dry mix knob.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle. I'm losing sleep.
And then it just kind of gave it that super modern sound. It's kind of got this effect or tone that you can't quite work out, but it's really pleasing to the ear, or I think anyway. And then the last thing, because this was a pop song, and I know I was talking about keeping the vocal sounding full of life before, but I actually wanted to smash it with Sausage Fattener here, which is a limiter, and this is actually what's giving it a lot of volume. So when I turn it on,
pour another whiskey from the bottle. I'm losing sleep.
And then off.
Pour another whiskey.
It's a considerable drop in volume. But what it's doing is it's basically a limiter. So it's cutting my vocal off at 0 decibels. So my vocal's never going to go above that, which, with the saturation being added and stuff like that, it's quite easy to create this really smooth vocal that doesn't clip in any places and doesn't sound too bad either.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle. I'm losing sleep.
So again, just a bit of fatness to the vocal there. And that's what it's doing, really. It's just adding a bit of that fatness and just more upfront. So if I just take all these plugins off, again, we can listen to the before. Here's how it's sounding.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle. I'm losing sleep.
And then here it is with all of the plugins on.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle. I'm losing sleep. I can't make it go away.
So you can see it just really brings it forward, adds that grit, that kind of forward vocal sound. And then when you put it in context with the track here, again, I'll do it without the plugins here, and then you can hear it with. So here's without the plugins in context of the track.
The whiskey from the bottle. I'm losing sleep. I can't make it go away.
And now here it is with the plugins.
Pour another whiskey from the bottle. I'm losing sleep. I can't make it go away.
And that's the chain. That is the chain for the main pop vocal. And then what I've done is I've added an extra track here because I wanted to give it this really kind of almost robotic but natural sounding kind of effect here.
Pouring out the whiskey from the bottle.
Here it is on its own.
Pouring out the whiskey from the bottle. I'm losing sleep.
And again, all that is, I just bounced this vocal out. So it's just one file like this. And then I just added vocal synth by Eiosis here. And I used the Biofox and I shifted it down. And then I used Polyvox and I shifted the format down and increased the character just here. And vocal synth, if you don't have it, again, you don't need these plugins to get perfect pop vocals. I've managed to get some really great pop vocals using just stock plugins. So again, let me know if you want me to do that. This is just what I used on one of my most recent tracks. And I just wanted to share the process with you behind the scenes. And then, of course, added some reverbs, delays, and some parallel compression. But again, I will probably go over these in a separate video as I have thrown a lot your way. The main recap is this main vocal here is using a variety of plugins, but they're all doing small jobs, just little jobs. So it looks like a lot, but each one is doing a little thing. And then when you start stacking the little things, it's going to become a much cleaner, nicer sounding vocal. So hope that made sense. Hope that helped. If you could do me a massive favor, hit the like, subscribe button, or if you're following, if you're listening to this as a podcast, go ahead, leave me a review. I think you can do reviews on Apple Podcasts. And as well, just to kind of round off as well, it's the new year and I want to give you something. It's the year to get creative and to be productive with our time. I think a lot of us felt sluggish in 2020, and I want to give you a free guide, jumpstart your creativity. So basically, how to just bash out these creative tasks in a short amount of time, just always remaining productive with the time that you have and getting motivated. So I want to give you this guide for free, and you can find it at madman-music.com/jumpstart. Free guide, go grab it. Let me know how you get on with it. Happy New Year again, and I'll see you in the next one.